Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm calling the Southborough School Committee meeting to order on Wednesday, August 13th, 2025 at 7:01 p.m. 4 out of 5 members are present this evening and this is a Zoom only meeting and an off-cycle meeting. So our first order of business is the facility rental account for the Trottier roof. Becky, do you want to take this one, or Greg?
Becky can take this one.
Sure. So, as you know, we are engaged in an MSBA project for the Trottier roof. We have been assigned a project or a OPM for this project, and that is Colliers. As part of that project, we are going out to bid for a study to be conducted. And we have learned that the amount that was originally allocated, which was $100,000 for the feasibility study, which also included the expenses for the OPM, is now not enough in order to cover both of those agencies or both of those firms' expenses. We are estimating that we will need approximately another $60,000 for this project. And so we have looked at alternate sources of funding that we have within the district. As you know, we do have a revolving account, which is a facility rental revolving account. The funds in that account come from the rent that is paid by the Northborough District and the Northborough-Southborough Regional District to Southborough for the central office, as well as classrooms that are leased by Assabet Valley Collaborative at both Woodward and at Trottier. At the beginning of July, we did have just about $138,000 in that account. We are anticipating over the coming year receiving those rental fees of about $77,000, which would leave us with an approximate ending balance of $207,000 at the end of the fiscal year. So we do think that we are able to absorb the costs of this additional cost for the roof feasibility study. And I welcome any questions about this.
Anybody have any questions? No. So in terms of moving forward for any other projects, like, did we have a contingency amount built into the estimates, and what advice did we get or not get from the MSBA on how to project these costs?
So Keith, feel free to jump in, but I will try to summarize. So we did consult with the MSBA. They will not give us amounts. They give us estimates. Actually, if you log on to their website, they do give estimates for roofing projects, and that's where the $100,000 came in. However, due to the size of this roof, that's what is causing the overage. The estimates that they provide are for smaller roofs. And Keith, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, you are. It's a combination of the complexity of the roof system. It's not just simply a flat or a pitched roof. It's got both. So that is kind of what escalated it beyond what MSBA had provided as examples on their website.
Okay. And this falls within the four corners of what the facility rental account can be used for?
Yes, yes. We utilize those funds for any type of building maintenance. We've used it for paving projects in the past, and we have used it for other roof repairs as well.
All right. Any other questions on this? All right. So I will move that the school committee support using the facility rental account for the increased funding for the Trottier roof for, is it schematic design?
Feasibility study.
Feasibility study. Thank you. Is there a second? Second, Denise. Thank you. Roll call vote. Roger.
Aye.
Laura.
Aye.
Denise.
Aye.
And Chelsea's aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Article language for fall town meeting, Neary roof. Do you want me to do this, Greg, or do you want to do this
So
one?
I can just provide some context. So with the failed vote at the ballot and at town meeting for the Neary building project, one of the unintended outcomes is, what are the immediate needs at Neary School in terms of this facilities? All along, we knew that the roof was a significant need, and that if we had a failed vote, we would move forward with a roof project. So Keith this summer has worked with our roofing consultant to get data on cost and options and see if there's a short-term solution. And he can present some of the data. And the question is for the committee, does the committee want to add it as a warrant article for the fall town meeting? Keith, do you want to talk about the report?
Yep. So the report was what we had expected. It just confirmed what we kind of already knew about the real Neary roof, that it is in a failure state in many different ways. That was also demonstrated through the movie that I did in the spring of walking the roof as well. But our consultant is a strong one. We have used him for many years on many different projects, and he hasn't steered us in a bad direction. So I thought it was a quality report that we received from him. And he also concurred that the roof is in a condition now in which it needs to be replaced. No repair at this point, other than maybe some small repairs, would help us get through, and that a full roof replacement is what's recommended. But I'd be happy to answer any more detailed questions.
Anybody have any questions on that?
Can I just provide a little more context too? And again, I think the committee has heard this information, but I think it's worth sharing again that 5 years ago, we submitted several statement of interest to MSBA's accelerated repair program for the fin roof and the fin boiler at the time, the Trotter roof. We also were planning on submitting a statement of interest for the Neary roof. However, we also knew that we were going to submit a statement of interest for Neary to enter into MSBA's core building program. So it didn't make sense at that time to do both. As we know, we were successfully invited into the core building program by MSBA for Neary. And 5 years ago at the time, we made a decision to do a short-term roofing repair to buy us 3 to 5 years to get to the point where we thought, a new building potentially would be underway, being constructed, and eventually come online. I want to make sure that the community knows it wasn't out of a lack of attention, not knowing that it needed something and us not doing, a project. It was more about trying to be smart around the process and the tools and the partnerships we had with MSBA. But again, the voters spoke. The voters who showed up spoke. The building did not pass. However, the need for a new roof at Neary remains critical.
So Keith, for this roof proposal, what is the life expectancy of the roof? And are there varying costs associated with the length of time that we would expect this roof to last?
Typically, with a new roof system of this type, we're able to get a 40-year warranty, which is something that is standard. Any kind of reduction of that to look at additional options is really not about what would be put on the roof, but is more about the labor. So the cost of this replacement is more about the labor that is involved versus the roof system that's chosen. So the best advisable piece is to go with something that would get us a good size warranty, and that's also something that comes with greater sustainability for that shorter time window that we're hoping for versus a thinner roof, which would then perpetuate issues, maybe even as early as 5 years. So this is definitely something that I've reviewed with our consultant in a number of different ways, sharing all these variations that we're going through with Neary and talking about what ifs, and he still came back to the same advice of how to proceed.
Mhm.
I'll
Okay.
also add, Keith, we did ask the consultant, what are all of our options?
Right.
So we didn't start with, is it a full replacement? We said, are there any shorter term solutions to buy time?
Mhm.
So, our roofing consultant, Garland Consulting, um, we've worked with them on other projects in Northborough, and they've been excellent around if there are alternative solutions, presenting those to the district. So we have a menu of choices. And in this particular case, he could not recommend, a short-term solution because we've already implemented that 5 years ago.
Correct.
And we did take a position to put a placeholder last week. And I did speak with the town administrator this week, and we have to, if we are going to move forward with putting this on the warrant, then we need to have the language done by September 2nd or 1st, I think. I think select board is potentially talking about it on September 2nd. So kind of on a tight timeline to get the wording done. But I think it's important, and I know this committee knows because we've talked about it, that the community knows we were planning on closing Neary if the new school went through next June. So that's still the current plan, is to have the current roof through this current school year, and hopefully start prior to the school year ending. But we cannot operate with this roof a year from now. Like we are at, it is beyond its end of life, and we do not have anywhere else to put our students who are in 4th and 5th grade a year from now if we do not if we're not able to move forward with a new roof. It's critical, and I know the building inspector has been in there and has expressed concern around the quality of the roof, and especially with kind of seeing Keith's video. I think even since the video was done, there's been more bubbles formed on that roof. So I think this is, it's not, I just don't think we have another option at this point. We have to do what's best for the students, and I think at this point, a year from now, we need to keep those students at Neary. So with that, given that we're on August 13th and I wasn't planning on having another meeting before September 1st. So if it's okay with the committee, I'd like to delegate the writing of the warrant language to Greg and one of us to work on, if that's okay with you, Greg, and the rest of the committee. You're on mute.
No, I totally agree, because one of the things, Keith, that bothered me in the report was the fact that they speak about a wind taking that roof off. And we could be in a position where we have to do something like, what are we going to do? Can't leave the kids in the building. If the wind gets under that roof, it could end up coming off. That was very scary to me. So I totally agree. We need to do something. I mean, I understand why it wasn't done for 5 years. It wouldn't have made any sense financially. But now I don't think we as a committee have any alternative but to fix this roof, to put a new roof on. So I'm willing to help in any way.
So, Chelsea, my comment was Greg or designee.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Whatever. Greg and team. That's fine. So I'm happy to do it unless somebody wants to do it.
And Becky and I did have a conversation today. It's also reaching out to bond counsel and getting the language from our bonding counsel
Right.
to review with you, Chelsea.
All right. And just a reminder that this is all town funded. This would not be going through an MSBA process because we do not have the time to do that. Nor do we know that we would get in, and the cycle would not open until March. Greg? You're on mute, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do you think we should vote on delegating that? Okay. Does anybody else want to do it, or are you guys good with that? Okay,
I'm
So
happy to help, but if you want to do it, whichever way.
okay,
But if you need any help, I should say.
Okay.
I'm
All
happy
right.
to help, but if not, that's completely fine.
all right. So I move that Greg or his designee and myself will work on the warrant language for the Trotter roof. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Roger. Roll call vote. Roger,
Aye.
Laura,
Hi.
Denise,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
and Chelsea's aye. All right, thank you. Update on school building tasks from June 11th, 2025. Greg.
Sure. So just let me share my screen. So in June, the school committee tasked the district leadership team to complete a number of fact-finding and evaluation work. So it included updating the capital plan, conducting evaluation of safety conditions, identify 6 to 12 month must-dos. So you can see the list. And this evening, we'll provide a update of where we are in each team member. So Becky and Keith, Dr. Reinhorn and I will provide updates about each with more specifics. So we will have Keith do the first two. Keith, do you want to provide an update?
Sure, gladly, Greg. So as far as updating the plan, certainly the reintroduction of the NERI projects, including the roof that we just spoke about, is a critical part of what we're leaning ahead. That would have been the priority one for any type of capital plan that you would have seen. The other top priority for that plan is to look at some of the asbestos abatement that we have to do in the building. This has been identified in some previous reports and was certainly cataloged during the NERI building committee process as it unfolded. And there are two particular areas that we want to pay attention to as we go. The reintroduction of that capital plan, we also have been investigating with Brian Fantoni's help what becomes those top priorities of the plan. And that's kind of where we are now, is working with some of our partners to understand just where we are with some of the systems, what we would need for, a shorter term versus longer term. And similar to what Greg described before, what are those things that we could do short term versus what are those things that are more of a long-term solution and there are no other options. So that's where we are on the capital plan for specifically NERI and the reintroduction of those. And I've rolled over the other projects related to the other buildings as well. And that's certainly something that we are in the middle of. We usually don't do that process until a little later in the fall, but we have sped it up for the purposes of this, as well as meeting some of the town's requests to be organized around capital projects. So we're the investment of time now to understand our needs a little more completely and better at this early stage.
And Keith, you're referring to items that we would bring to annual town meeting, not anything additional for the fall?
Correct. So
Okay.
yes, I believe anything for the fall is certainly in the hands of the NERI roof, which is what we're engaged in now. Like the Trotter roof was for last year's capital plan. So both of those priorities are being met, and we were able to handle some of the other things from the prior year. We got a couple other projects working on right now, but moving forward for the FY27 capital plan, that's more of what this is referring to. Chelsea will be something that will look familiar. It'll have a lot of projects that are rolled up with a few adjustments to maybe their schedule and how they are prioritized.
Okay. So we have not brought the NERI roof to capital planning yet. So we probably need to get on that sooner rather than later. And I think Roger and Alan are our capital subcommittee reps.
True.
So I think Roger or Alan, if you can work with Keith on getting to capital and presenting this in the short term, that would be great. Meaning the roof,
Yep.
the Neary roof. And then when Keith's ready with the annual, getting in front of them potentially a second time.
Okay. Ellen and I can discuss that and determine. We'll go ahead and work with Keith on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right. Item 2, Keith.
Greg, I have the backup for all that in front of me. What was the title?
Conduct evaluating the beta evaluate.
Oh, yes, the evaluation condition. So early in the summer, we engaged with Beta, who is reviewing some of the environmental issues related to Neary and Finn. They were contracted to do so. They came in throughout the month of July to collect samples and do a variety of observations and investigations. And they are in the preliminary. They also used a couple of different subcontractors to help with that work, and they're compiling their report now. I do anticipate it within the next week or so. Their preliminary findings were what we expected, kind of what we've shared right along, especially in like very similar to the roof. We went out and got those third-party investigations to come in and review, and we are not surprised by some of the preliminary things that they're thinking we should address. So I look forward to getting that report from Beta and getting a time to process it and to understand it more completely, and certainly have a more defined report for you shortly after. So we're on target for the end of the month, and I do expect that report, like I said, within a week or so.
So the other 2 tasks identify 6 to 12-month must-do. So Keith has been working with the local building inspector and Brian Fantoni, the local building inspector, to do a walkthrough and identified a list of tasks to be completed over the summer. So Brian Fantoni has been working through those tasks, and we are in a really great place. The building inspector came out yesterday, Keith?
Today.
So in all indications that we achieved the task list. So that is good news. We have the septic and structural analysis. So the septic at Finn and Trotter. So Keith has been working with our consultants around analyzing the septic system at Trotter and at Finn. So we're working on engaging in that. And Keith has been having conversations with the folks who kind of maintain our systems, and they've pointed us in the right direction. And then the structural analysis of Neary is just reviewing the work that was accomplished through the Neary Building Committee and the MSBA process to see if there's anything structurally at Neary that is concerning. And from all of the documents we reviewed, there was not updated enrollment with latest projections. So we have 2 enrollment projection updates. We have the most recent, which is December 2024 from NESDEC, and then RLS, who completed a demographic study, an enrollment study in 22, reviewed the data, worked with the town, looked at the census data, looked at birth rates, and updated that at the end of May. So we have 2 updated enrollment reports that we're looking at very closely and using as projections for some of the modeling that we're doing. And then update district reports completed in 2021 with current data. So that work was working in partnership with the Capital Plan School Research Subcommittee, really analyzing existing space, enrollment, septic capacity. So that was work that we did in 21 and reported to the school committee in 21, 22. And part of the work we've been doing has been updating that data and actually getting far more detailed data to support our thinking around different options. And we'll review that with the committee this evening. Respond to MSBA input on why the no vote. So that has been, I submitted that earlier this summer. They did reach out to me actually on Monday and asked how the feedback, how the mechanism for feedback was coming, and do we have any other insights? And I did respond, sharing that I've been working with the select board. There is a survey. I'm working with the town administrator, and that we anticipate the select board to take a vote on whether to ask for an extension or not at one of its upcoming meetings. And I'll continue to update the committee and work with the town administrator to learn more. Mechanism to receive feedback from the community. So Laura has been working in partnership with the select board and MTC to develop a survey. So that survey is out, and I believe, Laura, it closes on the 18th. So it's open for about another week. So we encourage people to take that survey. And then 10 is develop an options table. So that is part of what we'll share in more detail this evening. And then lastly, early in mid-June, I did send out a communication to NERI families, just sharing information about where we are, what our plans are for the summer. And I do owe NERI families an update. And once I get the report from the beta group, Keith and I will sit down, analyze it with Brian Fantoni and Becky, and then and the committee, and then summarize it to the families so that we can assure them that the conditions are indeed safe as we have been saying. So that is an update on our tasks. And I think I would like to have Stephanie, Dr. Reinhorn, go into a little bit more detail about the work we've been doing to develop an options table, some of the data that we've used, and how we've come to our thinking and our recommendations around options, so that the school committee has an understanding of the process we've taken over this summer to get to our recommendations. So I will stop sharing, and I will have Dr. Reinhorn share here. Just give me one moment.
Is that sharing?
Can you see my screen? Yes.
Are you sharing or am I sharing?
Right now I'm sharing.
I think Stephanie's sharing because well, my
Oh.
thing's Stephanie Reinhorn's screen.
Do you want me to stop sharing?
No, you can. I didn't realize you were sharing.
Sorry.
So
Double
you
share.
so Stephanie, you can continue sharing
Okay.
and
Okay. Thank you. So as Greg said, I want to try to provide some insight into the process and the type of data and information that we've been working with and the people who have been involved. It's a tremendous amount of information and data, so I'm going to use samples to illustrate, but not actually try to walk through all of the different details. And
Stephanie, can I just add some a little bit of context? And you might be doing this, so I might be
nope, go
stepping
right
on
ahead.
your presentation. But the work has not been in isolation. It has not been me in a room working on this. It has been a partnership with the central office leadership team, building principles, getting input and feedback from teachers to come up with the work that you're seeing. So it definitely has been a partnership and a collective effort to make sure that it's not a single person, but it's reflective of a body of work and the thinking of many.
Thank you. So I think what will probably make the most sense is if I sort of walk through the progression of steps that we went through, and then I'm happy to go back to any of those steps and answer questions or give more detail. But I think it makes sense for me to just go through the whole progression first, if that's okay with the committee. So we started off really pushing ourselves to articulate our assumptions. And this is really an investigation or an inquiry, sort of deeper dive into option B, and looking at what I'm going to illustrate is looking at 5 through 8 at Trottier, which is a piece of option B. But this is sort of the process we've gone through for looking at each of these options. So we, said, what are our assumptions that are guiding the work as we go forward? For example, what part of the enrollment projections are we using? Based on those enrollment projections, we're assuming 8 classrooms per grade level. We're assuming that we adhere to school committee class size policy. We're assuming that periods are 46 minutes long, et cetera, et cetera. So we articulated the assumptions, and then from there, moved into analyzing staffing requirements. And this is a place where we worked with many different people, with the principals, with student support services. And this is, again, a snapshot of just one piece of a table of looking at this Trottier scenario. So we considered what is our current staffing at Trottier with 7 sections per grade level? What is our current staffing at Neary for grade 5? When we put those together, what would it be? And that was not just a simple addition problem. That was saying, realistically, what would the staffing need to be when they're in the same building? That included looking at caseloads with student support services and anticipating the students that we would project to be in particular programs. And it included looking at the level of detail of how many sections per week meet for a given discipline or subject. So it was, an in-depth dive into staffing. From there, we went on to look at the use of space, and we started with the current use of space. So this is a screenshot, and we did this in a few different ways. This is a screenshot of a floor plan. This is the second floor of Trottier, and we walked the building. We worked again with Keith and his team, with the principals, with teachers, to make sure we understood how all of the spaces are currently being used, both in terms of grade levels, but also in terms of like the specific use and sort of the amount of time during the day. We also, off to the right here, you see a little snapshot of a piece of a table that we also counted bathroom fixtures. So there was a little bit of walking through bathrooms and really trying to understand at the level of, what's being used as a staff bathroom, what's being used as an all-gender student bathroom, what's a bathroom that's being used with a student specialized program, which bathrooms need a separate bathroom because of, toileting for students and things like that. After looking at the current usage, we also sort of simultaneously, we kept the MSBA guidelines in the conversation so that we were using it as a bit of a benchmark. We have all different size spaces for different things because often we're working with what we have. So the MSBA guidelines provided us with kind of a benchmark to say, this is what the MSBA would reimburse for if it were this type of space. We then looked at the floor plan and said, for the proposed configuration, and this again, I'm illustrating with Trottier, if it was Trottier 5 through 8, how do we think we would best use the space? And we went classroom by classroom, staff by staff, discipline by discipline, working from our assumptions that we had articulated, working from our staffing and our discussions of caseloads and all of those things. Like, having said things like, we would anticipate a speech and language pathologist caseloads would be about this much, which means we would have this many speech and language pathologists. And could they share a space, or would they need 2 separate spaces based on caseload? So at that level, and tried to assign all the spaces. We then tabulated this information where we could see current use of space and proposed use of space side by side. And we could look at the square footage because our floor plan maps can be misleading. in terms of square footage, and it allowed us to also have sort of notes about, I'll just give an example from this screenshot of, if grade 5 was going to have a halftime behavior specialist and halftime school psychologist that was being shared with the other elementary building, they could share a space and be on opposite schedules. So we could note those sorts of things in here. So this was the next step. We then took all of these pieces and, if we go back to our current and our proposed and used our staffing diagram, there were some FTEs, some teachers or educators, or some usages that previously existed that had no space in the proposed, or that in the process of this analysis, we had realized certain implications of the proposed configuration. So we then tried to summarize the implications for that configuration in the existing building. And again, I just want to emphasize the assumption was in the existing building. And so we first articulated what are the spaces that did not have a space, what would the amount of space using MSBA recommendations and our current spaces that might require. And then we also looked at implications in terms of things that might not be about a space that is required, but might be about the sort of ways of meeting and maintaining programming. From that, we then were able to look across options and tried to create a synthesis that creates, sort of a heat map or a more visual representation of the places where we felt that we were able, if we look at option B, yes, we're able to meet that criteria of maintaining specials programs, or yes, we can do it, but with trade-offs, or no, we do not think we can do it. And then there were a few places where we said we would need more information, and that was mostly about plumbing, that plumbing code was a lot more complicated than we felt was within our wheelhouse, not our expertise. So there were some areas where we said, that needs to be investigated. So that's kind of the progression that we went through to get to this synthesis where we were then able to say, and not everything is represented in this synthesis, but we were able to try to highlight some of the key areas that we were considering. Not everything in the criteria list is of equal priority. And we have not yet kind of represented that. That's something we've been talking about and thinking about. But we did then use this to sort of say, what are our overall recommendations related to the particular options? So that's the process. I'm happy to answer questions and go back to anything. And if Greg, I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, so I just would reiterate that as a very granular process from, staffing comparison, very detailed, working very closely with HR, working very closely with Keith and Gary and Leighton, thinking about how we're using space. So this is very detailed, and it was very time consuming, but important to inform our evaluation of options. And also, Stephanie will present what do we think the educational programmatic implications are. In particular, if we had shifted grade 2 to Finn and grade 5 to Trotter, and she'll speak to that next.
Okay. So I know this is probably really challenging to read on the screen, but I will, since we were just looking at Trotter, I think I will actually start with Trotter and the implications in terms of if we were to move grade 5 to the current Trotter building. adding Trotter to the current building would change the way we obviously would change the way we utilize space, staffing, and programming. And we would not be able to maintain the current level of educational programming without an expansion to the building, is kind of the overall summary. Some specifics of that are in terms of education, educational programming, the music program, we would not be able to maintain having all 4 grades have general music education in a music room at Trotter in terms of the utilization of space and the allocation of space. So something would that space would have there would have to be additional space. In terms of art classes, there also is not space for grade 5 for art. These are all then decisions of like art could be moved probably more easily art than music, but art could be art on a cart, meaning that for 5th grade, it would not work for the other grades, but for 5th grade, art could go to the classroom. But the trade-offs, and part of the reason we then talk about yes with trade-offs, is you wouldn't do the same things. They're not going to work with clay and make pottery pieces when art is on a cart in the classrooms. They're not going to do paper mache projects and things that are messy and materials intensive. So without an additional art space, that would be an implication. In allocating the spaces for the proposed configuration at Trotter, there would not be sufficient teacher preparation space. This is a space where there's often photocopiers, laminators, and it's used by educators, ESPs, and often our PTOs also use these spaces for preparing materials, and often for our ESPs, this is a landing spot where they can do their work, where they don't have necessarily a home base in a classroom. In terms of physical education, we would have to have physical education classes doubled up every period in the gymnasium. And we would still either need an additional PE teacher or an additional space in order to be able to meet the needs of 5th grade in addition to 6 through 8. Bathrooms, as I said, we need somebody with expertise to explore that. We do know that currently many of our staff with 3 grades at Trotter, our staff often have to travel a long way to get to a staff bathroom because some of our single stall bathrooms are allocated for student uses. Conference room, we would need an additional conference room so that we have dedicated special education conference room and dedicated spaces for administrators and teacher meetings. And in terms of dining, currently we have a small group student dining space for students who are not able or who are best served having dining in a smaller area. That would not exist in the current proposal because that had to be redesignated for other use. The additional implications are that we would have more faculty that are shared across buildings if we're maintaining our same level of programming. And this has multiple implications. One is that when people are traveling across buildings, the schedules from those 2 buildings now need to be synced in certain areas, which just creates scheduling constraints that the buildings have to work with. And as you increase the number of people that are traveling across, you increase the scheduling factors that the principals have to work with. There would also be a question of if someone is being split Finn to Woodward and someone else is being split Woodward to Trotter, or is one person being split Finn to Trotter, which would mean they work with our youngest and then they work with the upper elementary and middle. So those are just things we would work out. We do pay a stipend for travel, so we would calculate that based on who's traveling how many days a week. So that would be a cost associated with more traveling teachers. We also know that there can be decreased sense of belonging for faculty when they move between buildings because they don't always feel like they have really a home, and they often have shared spaces. So they don't always feel like they have a place to hang their hat or know kind of which school do I really belong to. We would need to reconfigure the main offices to increase administrative assistance, and we would have a shared assistant principal, so we would have to work on that. I'm going to go over the lunches because I think, or I don't know if Keith wants to speak to the lunches.
I'd be happy to, Steph, if you need a little break.
Sure. Why don't you speak to the lunches?
Certainly. So the Tri-Year lunch waves, the way they're currently organized is 3 lunch waves, one for each grade. They start at 10:30 and go to approximately 11, and then 11:15 to 11:45, and then 12 o'clock to about 12:30. There would simply be too many students to add a full grade level to one of the existing lunch waves. We could add a 4th lunch from 12:45 to 1:15, and those students would have 5 periods prior to lunch and 1 period after lunch, which could impact student learning or create additional constraints on scheduling to ensure proper breaks throughout their time in the building and prior to that lunchtime, which would be later. We could split a grade level across 2 out of the 3 lunch waves, but this creates additional scheduling constraints related to how specials would be arranged. And finally, the approach to lunch groupings, which Stephanie kind of hinted on, can also have impacted on students' social dynamics and opportunities and what they're capable of handling and the supports that they need. So that was certainly part of the analysis that was done. I gave you 15 seconds to catch your breath, Steph. I hope you're ready.
It was great. Thank
All
you.
right, good.
Another implication is that currently 5th grade students at Neary have access to a playground equipment, and that is something that does not currently exist at Trotter. Another implication is that room 138 is equipped with ovens and cabinetry at this time, and in the proposed floor plan, that would be a classroom, and so that would just need renovation. Library is a place where we would gain efficiency. We currently have reduced to 3 librarians in anticipation of the potential for consolidation because we had a retirement and we said, let's wait and see what happens. So we would be able to stay with 3 librarians, but not have them travel. Right now, there are 3 librarians traveling across 4 schools. If we consolidate, we would have 3 librarians in 3 schools, which means libraries could be open full-time. Parking at Trotter would need additional parking for events, but should have sufficient parking for daily staff. And drop-off and dismissal, we would anticipate that we would take a longer time with increased numbers of families, students, and buses, and that there would be increased traffic for cars and buses. For some of these things, it would depend on decisions that are made, but our estimation is that the learning spaces that would need to be added, and this is not inclusive of hallways, restrooms, or sort of that non-teaching space, would be about 7,200 square feet in order to meet the minimum threshold of maintaining programming. So that's the Trotter 5 through 8. Do you want to?
I'll just add, if you use MSBA's calculation for hallway space and a grossing factor, we have a calculation of anywhere between 10 to 13,000 square feet total, which would include hallways and bathrooms and other important spaces. But again, we are not in the business of doing those calculations, but it's our estimate based on our analysis.
And Greg, how big is the current Trotter?
How many square feet, Keith?
130,000 square feet.
So you're looking at a 10% increase.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I would add as you think about that increase is that it's sort of this note in red is it doesn't necessarily resolve all of the challenges because you're not going to add another gym, or you'd have to really think about how do we solve if we think the cafeteria depending on where people land on the level of priority about lunches or phys ed. Like there are some of the spaces that it's a little bit of a challenge to think about. So
And we did consider this work beyond, our job is to say, here's what we need in terms of space. We did not think it was our, area of expertise to say this is how it would be designed, or here's
yeah.
what we consider. Here's the septic system and how it could fit. Where could it go in Trotter? So all of that work would need to be um, sorted out by another committee with area of expertise in that domain.
Right. Okay, so in terms of, do you want me to go on to Finn or Chelsea and
Let's just stop and see. You just gave us a ton of information, which I think, this is an extremely large amount of work. So first of all, thank you, Stephanie and Greg. And I know there was a lot more of your team and the building teams that helped put this together. But let's pause here and just see if there's any comments or questions based on the process that you went through or the Trotter fifth grade analysis. So Roger.
First, I'd also like to, I guess, recognize the effort that was expended in going through this process to analyze this. This question is going to sound foolish. I have a couple of questions. So the first one is going to sound foolish. So why did we do this? I know it's going to sound foolish, but tell me why we did this.
meaning why did we go to this level of detail to
Why
analyze?
did we
Yeah,
evaluate
I can answer that. So
putting the fifth grade at Trotter?
So I think there are citizens who truly believe that we can fit our existing programs, close Neary, put second grade at Finn and fifth grade at Trotter with no impact and no cost. So part of the work this summer was really to do very detailed staff by staff, space by space analysis to give people confidence that we fit or we don't fit, and if we don't fit, why, and where don't we fit, and then what space additionally would we need to actually maintain most of our programs. And Stephanie mentioned some are still impacted, like gym, physical education. So that the purpose was to provide data to support our thinking and rationale around why having grade 2 at Finn and grade 5 at Trotter doesn't fit with the current space we have and meet our educational programming for students.
Okay, so I thank you for that response. I guess in fairness, I would have answered the same way. I would have said, seems like the reason we did this is because there was a citizen, some citizen thinking that we could add the fifth grade to Trotter. And so that's an oversimplification, I guess. Your answer was better than mine. But we looked at this several years ago, right? I can't remember exactly when it was as far as looking at adding a fifth grade to Trotter, correct?
Yeah, we did 21.
Yeah, I think it was, and determined that it really wasn't is feasible the right word, but so that was determined at that time. So we went through this now really because there was some citizen thinking that, well, we should be able to fit the fifth grade into Trotter. We looked at it a few years ago. If circumstances changed a lot so that it would that the result could have come out a lot differently than it did then? I don't know. I mean, is that another foolish question?
I think the level of detail
Okay,
is different. The level of detail in 2021 is much less
okay,
than this, and the purpose of having greater detail at the level we're providing is hopefully to give people an understanding of what educational programs are impacted, how is the student experience impacted, and then what are the trade-offs.
Yeah, and I'll just add, just as an example, that, the level of detail we went to this time is to know how many students participate in band and in chorus in a typical year from fifth grade or from sixth grade or from seventh grade. How many instrument lessons are given per week for strings? How many instrument lessons are given per week for the wind instruments? And to really understand our current programming, and so that when people are asking, like, well, couldn't you with creative scheduling, we have the level of detail to say, if they're going to meet this many times a week, which is what they currently do, which gives us the level of program that we have, this is what's possible, even just theoretically, like without trying to actually schedule it. But it also, I would say, the other thing it gives us is the ability to, when people want to explore the, like, but what if we did an expansion? We have a lot more knowledge now of what it would take to close the gap between, like, instead of just having the answer of like, we can't do it, we have more information now to say, this is what it would take to get to that level of programming.
all right. Well, thank you. I mean, I don't know if the actual characteristics have changed in the last 3 or 4 years, but certainly to evaluate this with the level of detail you did, I'll sort of finish with where I started, which is I'm very impressed with the amount of work that went into providing this level of detail. And I'll let somebody else talk.
Laura?
Yes, I also as well want to echo everyone's comments here just regarding expressing gratitude for the amount of work, the amount of thoughtfulness, the amount of context and detail that went into this. I mean, this is extremely comprehensive. And when I was working with the working group in terms of developing kind of this larger grid or kind of evaluating it, that in and of itself took some time to sort of understand, what are we looking at? What are the criteria against each one of these potential options? That in and itself, took a minute to kind of digest. So I think even peeling it back a layer to understand where some of these criteria derived from, it's easy to say, oh, like I don't understand what this criteria means. Well, here is that additional context that provides just so much more detail into why each of these are multi-layered, and the way that you all, were able to synthesize this enormous amount of information into these criteria in and of itself was obviously an enormous task. So I just want to make it very clear the amount of thoughtfulness and time and just, the many people that were involved in putting these together. It was, a process that was really, that took a lot of time to put together. And, that matrix that was, created and presented is, just a part of the work, obviously, that went into that. So, I would certainly suggest to any resident or any other person that, may have some questions and would like to further understand that criteria, get a better grasp of it, to, listen to these meetings, to take the time, because obviously a lot of time was put into this. And again, just can't say thank you enough for being so thoughtful about this analysis. It's incredibly comprehensive, and my first response was, oh my goodness, like this is unbelievable. So just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you. Anyone else from the committee have any feedback before we move ahead? I'll just make one. Oh, go ahead, Alan.
I was gonna say, I mean, this, In terms of the positives of or the reasons why, right? I mean, to bring fifth into Trotter, like, is it fair to say that it's really the main driver is really just purely theoretically have room to put people in it, and that there isn't a lot of, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, when we read down the list, at least when I read it down, it's like these are all the reasons not to do this. And so when you read down that, it's obviously comes off as a bit as one-sided. But I think that the I think it, I guess what I'm saying is that are there any other positives other than there's this inclination that it's going to be cheaper, and that you could theoretically do it because people would fit in that building?
So I think overall, the idea of consolidating buildings is a positive for reducing transitions for students and families.
Hmm.
And I think that is something that has been a part of the conversation all along. I think the challenge is that this particular combination of 5 to 8, the trade-offs to get that consolidation are great.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe
it's
something I
not,
can
it's
add
less of
too.
a, oh, go ahead,
So
Greg.
we are not anti 5 through 8.
Right.
We are not saying this can't work. We are saying, though, that for schools who have gone to this model, a lot of intentionality and design and investment have gone into creating this model to make sure it works well, space is designed properly, and it's in the best interests of meeting kids' programmatic needs. So, we are not opposed to a 5 through 8, but we're opposed to just fitting in.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. And that's, I mean, that's my feeling on it as well, and has been my takeaways from the conversations from, town meeting and what was presented there to today.
And there are other towns that have designed for and
Yeah.
thoughtfully,
As Greg said, yeah,
and then
intentionality.
with intentionality,
Yeah.
and then are able to have a 5 through 8 where they meet the educational vision and the educational programming. So
Yeah.
what we're trying to lay out is this is the impact on educational programming,
Yeah. Okay.
like if we fit in,
Yeah.
and what doesn't fit in
Right.
with the current building.
Okay.
If we were building a new school, Alan, and you could design it the way you wanted for a 5th through 8, I think it'd be a totally different take on that. And just one other point, everything that was a negative on that list had an impact on the student experience, right? Like that's what I view as the school committee's responsibility, is making sure that, in 10 years from now, that we have not gone backwards in terms of what the students of Southborough got 10 years ago. Like that at least that's how I view what our role is. So yeah, maybe it is on with dollars and cents, but I don't think you can put dollars and cents on what the student experience is. And so
Yeah,
step
no, I think Chelsea, that's a good reminder. I mean, as far as like our unit goes, and our um endorsement as far as that goes, like it really is focused on student experience and the quality of what Southborough public schools are able to deliver. And I think, in that regard, I think it's a very obvious conclusion.
Yeah. And I look at, the 20 years prior to us of the school committees that have worked to get things into the budget, and not, they had the space to do it. And then unfortunately, if we were to take that space away and couldn't run those programs, I don't think that would be fair to the future school system of Southborough. So, All right, Stephanie, do you want to move on to Finn?
Yes. Let's see. Wait, I think I can do this by the way. Okay. Okay. Is that visible? Okay, so in terms of Finn, again, same process. I didn't illustrate with that as an example, but this was looking at the scenario of if you added grade 2 to Finn, and it would obviously require changes to how we use space, staff, and changes to programming. And similarly, what we found in summary is that we would need an expansion of the building in order to maintain our current programming. To be specific, when we allocated the spaces in a proposed floor plan, and there's an image of that to the right,
We might
we,
still be seeing the old tab, Stephanie.
oh,
I'm seeing grade 5 through 8, and it looks like there's another tab for pre-K to 2.
um,
At least that's what I'm currently seeing.
hmm. Oh, I think it's showing the wrong
You
screen.
probably have to reshare.
Yeah, sorry, I think I shared the wrong screen. Thank you for stopping me on. Now I think you should be seeing Finn.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So to the right, you can see just a smaller image of what I showed we did earlier with the floor plan. And when we went through and you know, allocated spaces with the proposed configuration of pre-K through 2, one of our assumptions being, which has always been, that this is only Southborough pre-K. There were a number of educators and disciplines that had no space. So I'm first going to go through those. These are, there is no space allocated for the following. Right now, in this proposed floor plan, there was no art classroom. So the implication is that either we would need to add an art classroom or art would be on a cart, which we just talked about the implications of that. Um, one thing I didn't say about that is particularly true for our elementary educators is that there is an impact for our educators when specials are on a cart because it means that the special is coming into the classroom and that is a preparation period for the gen ed teacher, but their classroom is now occupied by students and another class going on. And so they're not able to prepare things in their classroom for the next period or things like that. World language does not have a space in this proposed floor plan. We know from past experience when we first started our world language program that when it is on a cart, the teacher is unable to have the visual aids, hands-on materials, a Spanish book library, many of the things that she now has established now that she has her own classroom. So that would be an impact. The speech and language pathologist, one of what would need a quiet space to work with individuals and small groups of students, and that is not currently allocated. They could share a room, but it would need to be at least the size of a half classroom so that two people could be running multiple therapy sessions at the same time. The school psychologist would also need an office with enough space for testing and to meet with individuals in small groups. That is harder to share because when testing, they really need to have that separate space and they do a lot more testing. We would have an additional zero point 0.5 school psychologist and 0.5 behavior specialists that are some of those people that would be shared across buildings. They could share a space and be on opposite schedules in terms of who's at the other building, at that time. The PT and the adaptive PE who could share a space do not have one allocated in this floor plan at this time. And with any of these shared spaces, I think it's important to keep in mind that that then does create scheduling constraints. If, if if they sometimes they can share the space and both be working with kids at the same time, but sometimes sharing a space means we need to schedule it so that you're not both with kids at the same time. English language development, sorry, I should have changed that acronym. English language development would need a small group room to meet with individuals and groups of students. There are some English language development spaces assigned on here, but there would be a third English language development teacher in this proposed scenario, and there's not an assigned space for that person. We would need 2 designated conference rooms for special education meetings, teacher team meetings, and administrative meetings. And currently, there are no conference rooms allocated in this proposed floor plan. The reading specialists, which we would, with this number of grades, have 1.5 reading specialists. Either could have a shared full-size classroom or 2 smaller spaces to meet with individuals or small groups. There is also typically a reading tutor. Our early childhood, early literacy program has more intensive supports than some of our other schools, and they would need also a small space for meeting with small groups. There are opportunities for sharing there, but would need at least 2 spaces across those 3 positions. Again, would need designated teacher workspace for teachers, ESPs, volunteers. We have a significant number of community volunteers who come in and help with teacher preparation, and they use these teacher preparation spaces, as does the PTO. Faculty bathrooms is another one that needs to be investigated and determined. Some of our programs, such as the Castle Classroom, need designated bathrooms, and so sometimes that could interact with making sure we have the right bathrooms for faculty, students, and all of the different populations. So those are the spaces that just literally were not, there was no space to assign to them in the proposed plan. In addition, these are some other implications. Music, we could have a 1.0 music teacher teach the general music classes for kindergarten, first and second grade. However, currently our general education music teacher also teaches preschool, and that would not be feasible. So preschool would lose music unless we added staffing, but we would also have to add a space because that space would be full in terms of meeting the needs of K through 2. Library, same thing as Trotter. There's actually efficiencies that are gained in terms of the library. That librarian would be able to be full-time in that building, and the library would be able to be open full-time. Keith, is Keith there? Do you want to
I
do,
am.
you want to do cafeteria?
Gladly will. So our current lunches are similarly scheduled to Trotter, where there are 3 lunchways, 11, 11:45, and 12:30. One key factor that was reviewed is the maximum number of seating of students in the cafeteria is 145. Therefore, we could not accommodate 2 grades or split a grade across the lunches. The cafeteria is just simply too small. We would need to add a fourth lunch wave that would be required, which could either be at 10:15 or at 1:15.
And the only alternative to that is to add another space for eating. So
Correct. Yep.
that's a possibility. Thank you, Keith.
Again, your 15 seconds of breathing.
Thank you. And then this is similar to what I talked about with Trotter, but there is this additional number of faculty that would be working across buildings and sort of the same implications that I talked about at Trotter in terms of scheduling constraints, decisions around do we actually split more people so that people are working with sort of the same developmental range, or do we do the more efficient split where they work with the youngest kids and then maybe work with middle schoolers? And so there's decisions to be made there. And then shared spaces that go with shared faculty. There's stipends for itinerant faculty as well, and sort of the challenge of making sure that they belong in the school communities. Drop-off and dismissal, we would expect with the increase in students at Finn that it would obviously take longer, but that there could be significant traffic challenges in terms of buses and cars and sort of the impact not only on those who are in the line, but also on the community in terms of the overflow. And the parking currently is a challenge for faculty and staff. So we would need additional parking for the daily use in addition to what we would need for events. And again, we put together what we think is the amount of square footage that would meet some of these minimum, some of these areas that just don't have assigned spaces, and that came to 9,000 square feet in terms of the learning spaces, not inclusive of the hallways, restrooms, and non-learning spaces.
Just a comment, Stephanie, around parking, that is not an area of our expertise. And, so when we're thinking about it, it is something that would need to be studied in terms of traffic patterns, the number of parking spaces, event parking, and that is not our domain. That would need to be an expert in that field.
Agreed.
But I think it's fair to say that we already have challenges with traffic flow and parking anytime you have any sort of event at Finn. So I think it would need to be heavily studied.
Yes.
Our prediction is that it would be a challenge.
Yeah. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on Finn? So just so that we're clear, this Finn would be absorbing one grade, but in addition, Trotter would need to absorb one grade in order for this to work. So we're not talking about 9,000 plus your calculation, Greg, which is probably back up to 13 or so. We're talking about 13 times 2 in order to accommodate with trade-offs still all the educational programming at both a renovated Finn and a renovated Trotter.
Yes,
Correct.
It's an and, not
It's an and.
or. Yep.
All right. I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's not one or the other. We would potentially, and I'm not saying we should do this, but if we were to do this, we would be renovating 2 schools at the same time and still not accommodating everything as it is today. And I'm not saying that everything that we're doing today is perfect. It's, we're always a work in progress in this realm. But at a minimum, providing the level of education that we would all expect as Southborough taxpayers. Denise. You're on mute, Denise.
After looking at both of these, the work was immense and I appreciate it. And hopefully it will show to the town that
I think we lost you.
squeezing kids
Sorry,
into buildings.
Denise, can you start over? You cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said, looking at both of these, it was an amazing amount of work, and I hope that it will show the town's people that in order, if we do this, am I okay?
Yeah, you're good. Keep going.
In order to do this, we compromise educational programs that the town of Southborough and the school system has been used to for years. It's a compromise, and it's a question of what do we want to compromise? We want to compromise the educational program in order to fit these kids into a building and take away things that they've been used to and what Southborough's known for.
And I guess what I would say, Denise, is we tried to stay very clear about the options that we were asked to study. And this option was using the existing buildings. And so if an addition or an expansion and renovation happened at both buildings, and all of the studying that needs to be done was done, and all of the work that needs to be done was done, there might be a way for it to be done without compromise and to consolidate into this configuration. But what we were asked to study was in the current buildings.
No, and I appreciate that. I really do. And it was a lot of work, and hopefully people will understand where you were coming from when we spoke the same language at town meeting. Thank you.
So what we then did, so Stephanie talked about kind of the process. We identified the educational programs that would have an impact to the student experience. And then the pre-K through 12 building committee that the select board gave a charge to identified options to study, and we took the lens of educational considerations of each of those options. And we synthesized all the information. We tried to come up with criteria to vet each of the options. And that is what Stephanie will share now and walk through that document. You'll see the first set of columns is the current configuration. That is our benchmark. And you'll notice on the heat map, in the current configuration, there are trade-offs. So, but that was our baseline.
And I just want to note that at the building committee, at the pre-K through 8 building committee meeting last night, there was sharing related to this, and that this is an even updated version since then, based on feedback from last night. And so that some of the things that were more subjective or more, we have tried to take that feedback. And so for some people who are watching who were also involved last night, it's continues to be a work in progress to try to best communicate the facts of what we have learned from this analysis. So as Greg said, the first column C through F are our current configuration. And what we did is we have the criteria. And again, it is not inclusive of every implication or every aspect of the analysis that we just discussed, but we tried to hit some of the highlights that have, varying degrees of priority. So, for example, it starts with maintaining specials programming, maintaining band, chorus, orchestra, and instrument lessons, dedicated spaces for English language development, intervention services, special education. So those are all kind of going down column B. Having dedicated spaces for our substantially separate special education programs, having adequate space for bus and parent drop off and pickup, reducing student transitions between schools, the ability to group classes by grade level in the physical space, curriculum expertise and resources are aligned within the building, restrooms to support students, and then we also included some areas related to the teacher experience in terms of being able to maintain or enhance teacher collaboration opportunities, have restrooms to support the staff, dedicated space for educator meetings, planning and preparation, and having office space for administrator assistants and administrators, and maximizing staff time and efficiency. So we then took these criteria and we can unpack them further, but a lot of them are related to what we've been talking about. And we went through each option. So if I move away from the current one, we went through each option and said, based on all of the analysis and all of the work that we've done, does it either yes, meet the criteria, or yes with trade-offs, which is the yellow. So green is yes, yellow is yes with trade-offs. Red is it does not meet. There are a few places where it says not applicable. And then there are a couple of places where the option was needs to be determined based on codes or greater expertise. Do you want me, Greg, to talk through?
No, I mean, I think that we then again evaluated each option based on the criteria. And then we've had meetings around, okay, is this an option that does meet the criteria? Is it an option that we could support but with trade-offs, or do we not support it? And when we say do not support, for example, in option B, with no additional space added to Finn and Trotter, we do not support it because there would be an impact to educational programming for students without adding additional space. So, Stephanie, if you want to just go through each option
Sure.
and, kind of our recommendation.
So option A, which was Trotter serves grades 3 through 6 and Woodward serves 7 through 8. There were a number of different ways that we are not able to meet our educational programming and our educational vision. So we do not support, the district team does not support option A as a way to move forward. Option B, for each of these options, we broke down and analyzed sort of each building within the configuration, but ultimately it's, do you support the option? Although we could support the idea of Woodward serving grades 3 and 4, we were not able to support with the current building, Finn serving pre-K to 2 or Trotter serving grades 5 through 8 with the current building. So we landed at not supporting option B. Option C, which we wanted to be clear, is intended as a short-term solution of minimal renovation of NERI, which is the roof essentially and the asbestos abatement. We could support for that, with the trade-offs that you can see in the column. And then option D, which would be Finn being expanded and renovated to serve 4 grades, pre-K through 3, and Woodward becoming a 4 through 5. There's lots of assumptions in here because that's designing something that's not designed, but we assume that if that was designed for that intent, that we would be able to support that because it would meet the needs. Option E, which is a full ADA current code compliant renovation of NERI, we could support with understanding that there are trade-offs. And you can see that some of those trade-offs have to do with the fact that we have trade-offs in our current conditions. And one of them, just to keep in mind, is that the idea of student transitions and that the efficiency of kind of how we use our staff and how our families and spend time with, we would still have 2 grades and then a transition, 2 grades and then a transition, 2 grades and then a transition. So even if we did a full renovation, we would not solve that problem. Option F, a new 4-grade school we could support, and option G, a new pre-K to 5. Again, these both are, based on being able to design these, we could support.
And when you say the district team recommendation, that is internal to the school district, right? That's
Principals, central office.
okay. So any questions on this heat map? Go ahead, Roger.
Just a comment. As I mentioned earlier, I observed the meeting last night, just as a, remote audience, kind of listening. And I admit that being on the school committee probably affected my thinking about the meeting, but I did find that the discussion about the educational options to be about the most interesting thing in the whole meeting. And I realize this has evolved even somewhat from last night, but I really thought that was very interesting last night. Listening to the evaluation of these options.
Thank you. Anyone else from the committee? So what are next steps with this? And I guess I have a question in general. I mean, the amount of work that went into this is obvious. And you have all the supporting data to back it up. But how do we take this and make sure that people understand it? Like, what is the best way to communicate this feedback? Because I mean, the detail behind it, I don't think most people are gonna go through and review. But making sure that people understand that that this is not just subjective information from the district, that this is backed up by actual information.
So then some of the next steps, we are working closely. Laura is the school committee representative on the pre-K through 8 building committee. So one thing that's important to us is that, the school committee has purview around buildings and educational programming. That the school committee decides if it wants to change grade configuration, close a building, etc. And that our responsibility is to the school committee to make sure it has all the information it needs to make informed decisions, and that our first responsibility is to present to you and then to share that data with other committees that might be interested in seeing the data or learning about the data. So that is our next step, is now that you've had a presentation, you have access to our thinking. We will now go into more detail with the pre-K through 8 building committee, and also happy to meet with groups or citizens who want us to walk through this in more detail, um, to share our thinking.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other comments on this from the committee? All right, and I just want to again thank Greg and the entire team, Stephanie, for putting this together. This, when we met in June, was exactly what we tasked you with doing. And I appreciate all the efforts that went into this. I know this was not an easy thing to do, and I look forward to the public understanding what the educational constraints are for students on all the scenarios. Okay, are we good on this topic? Okay, I think you get a break on the next one, Stephanie. All right. Update on pre-K to 8 committee. I mean, we're good on that, right? Is there anything that we need to know from the pre-K to 8 meetings that have been happening, Laura or Greg or Stephanie? Or we covered everything in that topic?
I think we pretty much covered anything. I guess just the next plan in terms of when the committee is going to be meeting again will be on August 26th at 7. So that's just in terms of, waiting to have, there's other working groups that are additionally, collecting information and providing, data and what have you in various other areas of examination. So that's, pending as well. So that is when the next meeting is.
Great. Thank you. Roger?
Laura, I have a question, which, maybe it's not fair that I ask you a question.
Roger, I can't hear you.
Oh, let's see. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Not sure where my mic went. So the working groups that are a part of this committee, I think of them as subcommittees, although that they don't really have the term subcommittee. So how do they do that without having those meetings public? Do we know how they do that?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer. Again, that I obviously wasn't on the previous committee in terms of just like procedurally sort of and process wise how that worked. I guess this is just how for this particular committee we've proceeded in terms of having working groups. But that's a good question. I don't actually know specifically kind of, why that was set up in that particular that particular way. But it's a fair question.
All right, thank you.
Transportation update. Keith.
Yes, Chelsea, thank you. So happy to provide the committee with an update on transportation for the 25-26 school year. As you are aware, we are entering a new 3-year contract with NRT. Certainly want to thank Becky for all her work and putting it together and getting it to a final stage. So as we begin the first year, one of the focuses through the entire process of entering into this contract is implementing increased accountability standards. So one thing that we have built is a daily tracking system of the different things that could happen with our bus system, and on a daily basis, providing then a weekly report to NRT to either reconcile those things that occurred or put in corrective actions as needed. So that's the first thing that we're going to make sure is in place, and it was part of our practice last year, but didn't necessarily turn into any contractual type issues with NRT. So we are used to doing it, and we look forward to kind of rolling that forward, and NRT is fully aware that we're going to be engaging in that type of daily review. The second thing I wanted to mention is the way that we divided our assets for Southborough. As you remember, last year was the first time we did a different division of how our buses were assigned. The same assignments from last year will be replicated this year. So there will be 7 buses allocated to the Finn School for both the AM and PM routes, and there will be 8 buses assigned to Neary and Woodward for the AM and PM. So the changes that we have done have been around certain bus stops, deeper review of that. Obviously, introducing our kindergarten students into the system was an important piece of a lot of the work that is happening. The next thing I wanted to share is that NRT is introducing a new tracking app. It is called Beacon Connect Family App. I will be sending out instructions on how families could engage with the application, and it is, as of right now, all set and good to go for day 1. And I do have some assurances that it's going to be far better and much enhanced over the prior tracking app that we had. And we have actually experimented with it this summer through the ESY program and have found success pretty quickly and consistently. So we are looking forward to a smooth implementation of the new app. And then lastly, and probably most important, for the last few years, we've provided personalized letters for all our students to let them know what bus they are on, what stop they're assigned to, and approximately what time the pickup in the morning and the drop off in the afternoon would be. And as you can imagine, the alignment of 4,000 students with all of that data is important to ensure. And with NRT taking over a little more of the accountability of routing, this is something that we are currently working on and fine tuning to make sure that those letters are accurate once they go out. And I am predicting that they will be going out at some point next week. So, and lastly, I would say that all of our drivers for Southborough are returning. We did have one driver that was out on an extended medical leave, and thankfully she has been able to return. So as of Monday, NRT reported that we have all 15 of our buses with permanent drivers, which is very exciting and something that I hope holds true for the next 2 weeks before we start school. And I am in daily contact with NRT to ensure that that is the plan. If for whatever reason someone is not able to start the year or decides to go in a different direction, NRT has enhanced their cadre of substitute drivers who will be trained quickly to be implemented. So I am confident that we will be in a better position than we were last year, which is certainly something that we all had hoped for. So overall, feeling pretty good, and would gladly answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions on transportation? All right, Keith, will you be able to give us an update at our September meeting, just based on how kind of the kickoff school went and stuff like that?
I look forward to it. Yes.
Great, thank you. Next is pre-K to 8 school building survey. Laura.
Yes. So I was able to get an update. We have Matt Probst. He's the one that is managing the survey platform and has direct access to the data. So as of now, we have almost 650 responses. And regarding timeline, we are planning to close the survey on August 18th. That means it will have run for 3 weeks, which was the original plan and intention. And then just between, the few of us that are working on this, we're still just working out the details in terms of the plans for analysis and sort of what data we're looking to pull out of this, obviously for the intent of sharing with the committee and with the public at some point. So that is the plan as of now. And as I have any more updates just regarding the output there, I will absolutely share.
Great. Thank you. And do you know who's going to synthesize the data? Is it going to be Matt doing that?
I think it'll be a combination of the two of us, but that's something
Okay.
we need to connect on because I was just able to talk to him earlier today, and we're sort of just working those details out. But yes, he will primarily be leading some of the statistical analysis on the back end, and I'd like to also help, particularly with some of the the qualitative results. That is
Okay.
my previous area of expertise. So I'm going to talk to him about that a bit more.
Thanks. Roger.
Through the chair, to Laura,
Roger, you got to find your mic again.
I don't understand it. How about now?
Just get closer to the screen.
How about now?
That's good.
See, the mic isn't really coming from the screen. The mic's coming from
I don't
something
know. Looks
behind
like
the
it is.
screen. All right, that's very odd. Well, this PC needs to go into the trash pretty soon anyway. All right, so again, through the chair to Laura. So you said the survey will close the 18th. So we're in the third week with another 5 days to go. Do you sense that 600? Do you have a sense of what the expectation may have been at all? I mean, that may be an impossible question to answer, but why should I not ask it, even if it's impossible to answer?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And I think our original intention was to use as many channels as we could to reach as wide a group of citizens as possible. And that certainly has been the intent the entire time. I think, outreach electronically has been successful in terms of reaching, a wide variety of different groups of folks in town. So again, there wasn't necessarily a number on, respondents, but it was certainly to reach as many people as we could possibly. And I've, even been to there was some recreation event, I want to say like a week ago, and somehow the person that was DJing was talking about the survey. So it's certainly, I feel like the information has been spread and on various channels, Parent Square to all the parents are in our community via the superintendent, in various Facebook groups. So it seems like there's been a decent amount of traction via word of mouth and our outreach. So again, reaching as many people as we possibly can has been the intent, but again, not with a number attached, just as many as possible.
So you have no particular expectation. I know that August has got to be tough just to get people. It sounds like there was a lot of work done on trying to get respondents from as many different areas as possible.
Definitely.
It's just a tough time of year, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
In a big number.
Right. I mean, I think obviously the ability to complete it online and not necessarily, it makes it a bit more accessible for some. And again, just doing outreach with such a wide group of folks, just from from various subgroups of residents in the community has been helpful in getting the word out.
All right, thank you.
And Laura, do you know if there was outreach done and support given for seniors at the senior center?
Yes, there was. So Al Hamilton spearheaded that effort. In particular, he put a lot of work into ensure that there was a computer set up at the senior center and that there was someone there to man the computer to ensure that anyone who visited the senior center who was interested in participating had the ability to complete the survey and had someone there to support them for any questions. So that was certainly a focus that he put a lot of effort in and really was trying to ensure that those people and that group of folks was able to participate.
Okay, great. Greg, do you think it makes sense to do another blast either tomorrow or Friday through Parent Square?
Yes, I think it's wise to do one more.
All right, and
communication.
maybe put at the top, closing Monday. Is it Monday?
Yep.
Okay.
Monday.
All right, thank you. Okay. So that's all we had. So I appreciate everyone attending tonight. And especially where this is another off-cycle meeting, but hopefully I don't foresee any other reason to have another meeting before our regular September meeting unless something unforeseen comes up. Do you agree, Greg? Okay. All right. So enjoy the rest of summer. And I hope all the kids are very excited Friday afternoon at 3:00 when those teacher assignments come out. So I think it's 3:00. I don't want to misspeak. Is it 3?
Is it?
I think
I'm
we're
gonna
gonna have
set
to
my
wait.
alarm.
I think we're gonna have to wait all day.
Chelsea, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure you were aware, because I know there's no public comment on the agenda, but that there was a hand raised in the audience. So I just didn't know if
Okay.
you were aware of that.
Okay. Yeah, I did see that, but we don't have public comment tonight.
Okay.
So
Wanted to make sure that you were aware.
thank you. All right. So with that, I will adjourn at 8:47 p.m. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Laura. Roll call vote. Laura,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Alan,
Hi.
Roger,
Aye.
and Chelsea's aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
night.
night.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.